"Thief, grab that tramp now. Don't let her take another step." Sloane's hysterical scream not only shattered the manor's silence, it splintered the peace of that Tuesday morning like a hammer against a mirror. In the living room, Sadie was bent over the Persian rug, vacuuming with the care of someone handling a work of art. The motor's hum muffled the outside world, keeping her in a bubble of concentration and honest work. She thought about her mother's rent, the medicine she needed to buy. Suddenly the world spun. Sadie felt steel fingers close around her left arm, digging into the soft flesh near her shoulder. The pain was sharp, immediate. In a panic reflex, she released the vacuum cleaner's handle. The appliance hit the floor with a dull, dry thud, the cord ripped from the outlet by the violent jerk of her body being pulled backward. The silence that followed the motor's shutdown was terrifying. Sadie choked, the air fleeing her lungs. Her heart pounded against her ribs, beating in a frantic rhythm, like a bird trapped in a cage too small. She looked up, eyes wide, trying to focus on the threat. There were two of them, two hulking masses of muscle. The security guards, who usually remained invisible in the main gatehouse, were now there, inside the sacred living room of the manor, violating the space with their brutality. One of them, the taller one, with a scar on his eyebrow, was twisting her arm. He was applying an unnecessary restraint hold, treating the 110-pound cleaner as if she were an armed terrorist. The other blocked the exit to the kitchen, his hand hovering over the holster at his waist, his posture rigid, his eyes cold. "Miss Sloane." Sadie's voice came out trembling, a thread of sound strangled by fear. What did I do, my God?" She looked to the top of the white marble staircase. There was Sloane. Bennett's fiancée looked like a vengeful entity. She wore a white silk robe, long, flowing, impeccable, that cost more than the house where Sadie lived. But her face, Sloane's face, usually a mask of boredom and superiority, was contorted into an expression of visceral hatred. Her nostrils flared, her red lips pulled back in a sneer of disgust. In her right hand, Sloane clutched something against her chest, protecting it. In her left hand, raised in the air like a judge holding a death sentence, she shook pieces of torn paper. Irregular confetti of something that looked ancient. "You still have the courage, the audacity to ask what you did." Sloane began to descend the steps. The sound of her high-heeled slippers on the marble echoed like a countdown. "I knew you were envious, Sadie. I saw it. I saw the way you looked at my jewelry when you cleaned the vanity, the way you smoothed Bennett's suits. But this—" She stopped on the last step, her breath ragged with feigned anger. "This isn't envy. This is pure malice. It's what evil people do." Sloane advanced. The scent of her perfume, jasmine and vanilla, sweet, cloying, expensive, invaded Sadie's nostrils, suffocating. With a sudden movement, Sloane rubbed the torn papers across Sadie's face. The paper was rough, dry. It smelled of age, of a closed drawer, of memory. Time stopped for Sadie. She recognized the texture, the yellowish color, stained by time. And, in a quick glimpse between Sloane's perfectly manicured fingers, she saw the handwriting. That cursive script, elegant yet trembling at the end of the sentences. Mr. Thatcher's letter. The whisper escaped Sadie's lips before she could contain it. The horror she felt was greater than the physical pain in her arm. "Miss Sloane, for heaven's sake! This is the only letter left. It's Mr. Bennett's father's handwriting." Sloane let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Oh, look at that! The cleaner is a document expert now. Now you know what it is?" She took a step back, looking at Sadie with absolute contempt. "Funny. When I walked into the study just now and caught you with your hand in the drawer, ready to throw everything into the shredder, you seemed quite willing to destroy his father's only letter. Revenge, isn't it? Just because I called you out yesterday about the dust on the curtains. You wanted to hurt Bennett to get to me. No!" Sadie's scream came from the depths of her soul. She tried to break free, struggled, but the guard only tightened his grip, almost dislocating her shoulder. "I never went into the study today. You know that. I was right here. I would never ever touch Mr. Thatcher's things. Mr. Bennet will die if he loses that. He loves that letter more than anything. He won't die, dear. Sloane's gaze hardened, her mask slipping for a second, revealing the ice beneath. But you'll wish you had died before doing this. Bennet is far away. He travelled on business. And when he returns tonight for the one-year memorial mass of his father's death, you'll already be history. You'll already be in a filthy cell, which is where you belong. I didn't do it. Miss Eudora! Sadie screamed, looking for help. At the kitchen door, Miss Eudora, the 60-year-old cook, stood. Her hands covered her mouth, her eyes filled with tears. She was trembling. The gardener, Mr. Otis, peered through the back glass door, pale. No one moved. No one spoke. The fear of Sloane, the future mistress of that house, paralyzed everyone. They knew that a misstep meant dismissal, starvation. Sloane came very close, so close that her lips brushed Sadie's ear. She lowered her voice to a whisper that sounded like the hiss of a snake, audible only to the victim. I know you didn't do it, you idiot. It was me. I tore it with pleasure, every piece. It was delightful to hear the old paper ripping. Sadie froze. Her blood ran cold. She looked into Sloane's eyes and saw the abyss. It was not a mistake. It was not an error. It was planned. But who will believe the word of the housekeeper from the projects? Against the millionaire's fiancée? Sloane smiled, victorious. You are disposable, Sadie. Bennet will arrive. He will cry on my shoulder, and I will comfort him by saying that the crazy maid destroyed his father's memory. He will love me even more for having tried to save the letter, and he will hate you forever. The cruelty of that plan made Sadie's stomach churn. It was not just about being fired or arrested, it was about Bennet's heart. Sloane was going to break his heart and blame Sadie. You are a monster, Sadie sobbed. Take her to the garden, Sloane yelled, resuming her performance for the staff. Get this criminal out of my living room. Tie her to the old tree. I want her ready and exposed for when the patrol car arrives. No, please. Mr. Bennet will know the truth. God is watching. Sadie tried to dig her heels in, her old rubber sneakers skidding and squealing on the polished marble. Get this trash out of here. Now! Sloane screamed, and to add the final touch to her act, she slapped her own forearm hard, leaving her skin instantly red. Look! She tried to attack me! The security guards hesitated no longer. Sadie was dragged away. Her feet barely touched the ground. She was pulled through the luxurious living room, passing the portraits of Bennet, smiling, that gentle smile she had so often admired in secret. They went through the glass door that led to the garden. The shock was brutal. Inside, the air conditioning kept the house in an artificial, silent winter. Outside, the world screamed. The midday sun struck Sadie's face like a hot slap. The air was dry, stifling. The sky, a clear, indifferent blue, showed no cloud to hide her shame. The manor's garden was an expanse of emerald green grass, perfect, symmetrical. And in the center, isolated, imposing, stood the great oak tree, a century-old tree that Bennet's father loved. Its trunk was thick, rough, full of knots and scars. The roots protruded from the earth like thick veins of a buried giant. There, where the sun hits hardest, no shade, Sloane commanded, walking behind, shielding her eyes with her hand, holding the pieces of the letter in the other. The security guards pushed Sadie against the tree trunk. The thick, uneven bark scratched her back through the thin fabric of her synthetic blue uniform. She felt the roughness of the wood against her spine. Hands behind your back, the scarred guard ordered. Sir, please, I didn't do anything, Sadie pleaded, tears mixing with the sweat already beading on her forehead. Shut up, hands behind your back. She obeyed, sobbing. She felt her arms violently pulled around the tree's circumference. They could not encircle the entire trunk, so they tied her wrists together with a rough sisal rope, fastening her to a low branch that served as a hook, keeping her upright. The rope bit into the delicate skin of her wrists. They tightened it forcefully. Sadie moaned. Her circulation was cut off. Her skin began to burn. Then they wrapped another length of rope around her waist and the tree trunk, securing her upright, like a macabre trophy or a witch at the stake, awaiting the fire. She was immobilized, exposed, vulnerable. The other staff started appearing in the utility area windows at the side gate. The gardener, the laundress, the maid, all of them with their heads bowed. A heavy silence hung over the garden, broken only by Sadie's sobs. Sloane stopped in front of her. She stood about 2 yards away, at a safe distance, so as not to soil her silk robe in the dirt. She twirled a piece of the letter between her long fingers. "You know, Sadie," Sloane said, in a casual tone as if commenting on the weather, "Bennett is very attached to this old junk. Papers, black and white photos. He lives in the past. It's pathetic. I'm doing him a favor, cleaning up his life for our future. A modern house has no place for old things and no place for people like you." "You have no heart," Sadie cried, her throat aching. "He told me, one sad afternoon, he told me he traces his finger over the ink of that letter to feel his father existed, to feel he isn't alone in the world. How can you take that from him? He loves you." The mention of that intimacy, that Bennett had shared his pain with the housekeeper and not with his fiancée, made Sloane's hatred overflow. Her eyes blazed at Sadie. "He told you that? To the maid?" Sloane's voice trembled with jealousy. "While you served coffee, he bared his soul. That's why you have to disappear. You think you're someone. You think you're his friend." With a sudden cry of rage, Sloane raised her hand and threw the pieces of the letter and photo to the floor. Not just anywhere. She threw them onto the dry, dusty red earth, very close to the tree's roots, a few feet from Sadie's feet. "Oops. It dropped," Sloane said with childish scorn. "Trash belongs on the floor. The letter and you." Sadie struggled against the ropes in a purely protective instinct. "No, don't throw it on the ground. Please, it's Mr. Thatcher's picture." "Are you worried? Then get it." Sloane laughed. "Oh, I forgot. You can't. You're just a tree now." Sloane turned to the peeking staff. Her voice projected so the entire grounds could hear. "Listen carefully. The police have already been called, but they take a long time to get to this godforsaken place. Meanwhile, that woman stays there. She is dangerous. If anyone, I said anyone, gives her water, tries to untie her, or gets close to that thief, they are fired for cause immediately. I will make sure they never get a job again, not even cleaning a bus station bathroom. Understood?" The staff recoiled, frightened. Ms. Eudora closed the kitchen window, crying, "Let her bake there. The sun will do her good to clear her head." Sloane turned her back, her robe fluttering, and walked triumphantly toward the manor. The sound of the glass door locking was the final sound of the judgment. Sadie was alone. The garden's silence returned, but now it was hostile. The sun, which had previously seemed merely warm, now burned. The top of Sadie's head stung. Sweat ran down her back, seeping into the wounds made by the tree bark, salting the raw flesh. But the physical pain was nothing. What hurt, what tore her chest to pieces, was looking down. There, on the red earth, humiliated, lay the pieces of Bennett's life. A piece of lined paper, torn diagonally, showed only, "My dear son." Another piece, further away, bore the trembling signature Thatcher. A third piece, the most painful, was the small 3x4 photo stapled to a corner of the paper. It was torn in half. The face of Bennett's father, smiling gently, lay face down in the dust. Sadie remembered the day Bennett showed her that. It was on a rainy afternoon, months ago. He was in the study, his eyes red. She had only gone in to collect the cups. He did not treat her as invisible. He looked at her and said, "Sadie, do you believe people still watch us from above? I miss him so much that sometimes I forget what his voice sounded like. All I have left is this letter." She saw the richest man she knew, as fragile as a child, and now his anchor was broken on the ground. "Forgive me, Mr. Bennet," she sobbed, her head resting against the hard trunk. "I couldn't protect it." Suddenly, the air changed. The leaves of the oak tree above her began to stir, a rustle that began softly and turned into a constant swoosh. Wind. The weather was changing. Not rain, but that dry, strong, treacherous summer wind that kicks up dust devils. A gust of wind swept through the garden. The piece of paper where "My dear son" was written fluttered. It lifted slightly, spun in the air like a dry leaf, and fell 4 inches further, moving away from the root's protection. Sadie's heart skipped a beat. If the wind carried the pieces away, they would scatter across the acres of the garden. They would fall into the pool. They would fly over the high wall. They would disappear forever. If that letter vanished, Bennet would never know the truth. He would think that Sadie stole it and threw it in the trash. He would lose his father's memory and his faith in humanity on the same day. "No, stay still. Please, stay still," she whispered to the paper, like a desperate prayer. Another gust. Stronger. The dust rose, getting into her eyes. The torn photo of Bennet's father rolled across the ground, tumbling, moving 2-3 yards away from the tree. Panic seized Sadie. A wild, maternal adrenaline flooded her body. She could not let that happen. She needed to put those pieces back together. It was the only mission she had left. She pulled her arms violently. The rope on her wrists did not give an inch. The knot was a sailor's knot, firm. The skin on her wrists tore. Warm blood ran down her palm, but she ignored it. Her hands were useless. But she noticed one thing: the rope around her waist. The security guards had tied her standing, but the rope was wrapped around the oak tree's trunk. If she could force the rope to slide down the trunk, the wind blew again, howling. Another piece of paper threatened to fly away. "No!" Sadie threw her body weight downward, bending her knees. The rope around her waist did not cooperate. It was rough and tight against the oak tree's gnarled bark. When Sadie descended, the rope did not immediately follow. It jammed. The loop rose up Sadie's body, dragging her uniform, scraping the skin of her belly, rising until it painfully jammed beneath her armpits and against her breasts. Sadie screamed. The pain was excruciating. She hung suspended for a moment, her shoulders forced upward, her armpits burning. But she needed to reach the ground. She kicked the tree trunk with her heels, propelling herself. She used her hips' weight, writhing like a worm on a hook, forcing the rope to scrape against the tree's bark. The sound of the rope jerking down the rough wood was agonizing. With every inch she descended, the tree's bark flayed her back. Her uniform tore, but she got down. She reached the ground. She fell to her knees on the ground, panting, sweat dripping from her nose, mixed with tears. Her arms were stretched upwards, pinned behind her torso, in a torturous position that stretched her pectoral muscles to their limit. But she had reached ground level. Stretching her right leg as far as anatomy allowed, groaning with the cramp in her thigh, she used the tip of her dirty sneaker to reach the piece of paper that had flown furthest. With a delicate, trembling, almost surgical movement, she dragged the photo back. Then the other piece. And the other. She used her chin to push. Her nose, her shoulder. She gathered the pieces into a sad little pile, right at the base of the tree, where the roots formed a small cradle. But the wind offered no respite. A sudden violent gust shook the treetop. The whirlwind formed right there. The little pile of paper threatened to explode and fly in all directions. Sadie did not think twice. She had no hands to hold them. She only had her body. Ignoring the excruciating pain in her arms, stretched behind her, she threw herself face down onto the dirt. She placed her chest, her heart, directly over the pieces of the letter and the photo. She buried her face in the dust. her right cheek pressed against the ground, scratched by pebbles and dry twigs. She felt the texture of the paper against her skin, through the thin fabric of her torn blouse. They were there, beneath her, safe. The weight of her body was the only shield, the only anchor holding Bennett's memory to that world. "I'll hold on. I won't let go. The wind can blow all it wants," she thought, closing her eyes tightly, tasting dirt in her mouth. No one will take this from him. It was then that she heard a sound different from the wind, a mechanical sound, an electric hum coming from the surrounding flower beds. Sadie opened her eyes, terrified, her cheek still pressed to the ground. Her vision focused on something less than 3 feet away. A small black plastic head emerged from the grass, slowly rising like a periscope. An automatic sprinkler. She knew that sound. She heard it every afternoon. The manor's irrigation system was powerful. High-pressure jets to cover the immense lawn. And that sprinkler was pointed directly at the tree, directly at her. And, worse, at the base of the tree, where the ground was dry. The machine primed. The panic was absolute. That letter was 30 years old. The ink was from an old fountain pen, water-based. The paper was fragile, porous. If that jet of water hit the papers, nothing would remain. The ink would run in seconds. The words of love from Bennett's father would turn into unrecognizable blue smudges. The paper would dissolve into pulp. It would be the end. Total destruction. Sadie had a fraction of a second to choose. If she lifted her torso to breathe, to escape the impact, to try to break free, the water would hit the ground directly on the exposed letter. The jet's pressure would push the papers into the mud that would form and destroy them. If she stayed, the water would hit her. The high-pressure jet on her wounded back, the icy water, the mud rising around her nose and mouth. She remembered Bennett's sad smile. "I miss him so much." Sadie gritted her teeth. She buried her face in the red earth. She closed her eyes. She pressed her chest against the ground with all her remaining strength, sealing the papers with her own flesh. "Come on," she whispered to the black plastic nozzle, crying, "I'm not leaving." And then, with a dry snap, the water exploded. The water struck her like an icy whip. The first jet from the automatic sprinkler was not just a spray. It was a physical blow, heavy and pressurized, designed to reach the 30 yards of lawn in that immense garden. And Sadie was there at the epicenter, less than a yard from the black plastic nozzle. The impact made her gasp. The icy water hit her wounded back with the violence of a punch, instantly drenching the thin, synthetic fabric of her blue uniform. The thermal shock was brutal. Going from the 100-degree heat of the direct sun to the icy bath made Sadie's muscles seize in a painful spasm, a cramp that ran the length of her spine. Her survival instinct screamed louder than reason. Get up, run, breathe. She wanted to arch her back. She wanted to pull in the air she was lacking. She wanted to roll to the side to get her face out of the line of fire of that merciless jet, but she did not move. Not an inch, because beneath her chest, protected against the earth that was still dry in that small, sacred circle, was the paper, the letter, the fragile fountain pen ink that Bennett's father had used 30 years ago. If she lifted her torso even slightly, the water would get in. The jet's pressure would push the liquid mud beneath her body. The earth would turn into a swamp and swallow the words of love, the trembling signature, the smile in the torn photograph. So, Sadie clenched her jaw, dug her chin into the earth, and accepted the punishment. The sprinkler had a mechanical rhythm, a cadence of modern torture. It rotated slowly, casting its arc of water far away, watering the distant orchids, giving Sadie 10 seconds of relief where only mist fell upon her. But then the gear turned back. 5 seconds, the sound of water hitting the leaves drawing closer. 3 seconds, the sound of the jet cutting through the air. And then the impact, directly on her back, on her neck, on her ear. Water entered her nose, drowning her in dirt and liquid. Sadie coughed, without being able to lift her head, spitting mud, swallowing clay, but keeping her chest pressed to the ground as if her skin were made of lead. The ground around her began to change rapidly. The red dust of the savannah, so dry minutes before, turned into a viscous orange paste. A puddle began to form near her knees, slowly rising, threatening to seep beneath her abdomen. Sadie perceived the danger. The water didn't need to hit the letter directly. It could seep underneath it. Desperate, she used the little movement she had. She pressed her ribs against the ground. She used her knees to dig into the mud, creating a barrier, a human dike. The tree bark and the stones on the ground scraped her skin, mixing blood with the mud. But she managed to seal it. She became a human lid, airtight, sealed by pain and love. "I'll hold on, Mr. Thatcher. I'll hold on." She groaned against the ground, her voice muffled by the mud, speaking to the ghost of her boss's father. "Bennett won't lose you today." Far from there, 40 yards away on the manor's terrace, the scene was different. The cool shade of the Italian awning protected the area from the sun. There was a gentle breeze coming from the ceiling fans. Sloane was reclined in her favorite lounge chair, with a glass of orange juice with plenty of ice, which tinkled softly with each movement of her hand. She watched the garden with a satisfied smile on her lips. The sound of the sprinkler was classical music to her ears. "Do you want me to remove the deep cuticle or just the excess?" asked Kiki, the manicurist, who had just arrived for the home service. Sloane sighed, extending her left hand, where the engagement ring shone obscenely. "Take it all off, Kiki. I want it deep. I have a difficult event tonight, the 1-year memorial service for my father-in-law's death. I need my hands to be impeccable to hold Bennett's hand while he cries. You know how men are weak about these things." Kiki started working, but her restless eyes kept darting from Sloane's nails to the garden. The manicurist was a simple, observant young woman. She saw the strange movement near the great oak tree. She saw the figure lying in the mud, motionless, being lashed by the water. Kiki stopped the nippers in mid-air. She paled. "Miss Sloane?" Kiki's voice came out trembling. "That thing in the garden, is it a person?" Sloane did not even turn her head. She took a sip of her juice. "Oh, that's the cleaning lady. But is she tied up in the rain?" Kiki dropped Sloane's hand, shocked. "Miss Sloane, the sprinkler is hitting her directly. Won't she drown? She's not moving." Sloane huffed, annoyed by the interruption of her service. "She is being dramatic, darling. She is a thief. She was caught stealing jewelry and important documents from Bennett, a dangerous criminal. The security guards had to tie her up there to wait for the police. Otherwise, she would have escaped. But haven't the police arrived yet? She looks like she has fainted. The police take their time. You know how this country is." Sloane looked at the garden with contempt. "And if she wanted to get out of the water, she would lift her head, Kiki. She is lying there in the mud because she likes to play the victim. It is a tactic of poor people to evoke pity. Do not fall for it." Sloane snapped her fingers in front of the manicurist's face. "Hey, focus here. My cuticle is not going to remove itself. And if you nick me, I will not pay." Kiki looked at Sloane's hand again, but her hands trembled. She heard the sound of water hitting flesh outside. She felt a lump in her throat, but the fear of the rich woman, the powerful client who could destroy her salon's reputation, spoke louder. Kiki lowered her head and continued cutting, trying to block out the sound of human suffering just a few feet away. While Sloane focused on her beauty treatment, Sadie fought to stay conscious. The cold water on the open wounds on her back burned like acid. But the worst wasn't the pain. It was the cold. Hypothermia was starting to set in. The sun still shone weakly on the horizon, but her wet body, motionless on the muddy ground, was losing heat at an alarming rate. Sadie's teeth began to chatter violently. An uncontrollable tremor seized her shoulders, shaking her entire body, and then another sound mixed with the noise of the water and the crying. A vibration. It came from the right pocket of her uniform pants. Her cell phone. The device vibrated against her thigh, muffled by the wet, mud-heavy fabric. Sadie opened one eye, full of mud. Her heart leapt, aching in her chest. Who could be calling at that hour? Her mother? No, her mother knew she didn't answer while on duty. If it were Mr. Bennett. A wave of warm hope flooded her frozen body. Mr. Bennett always called when he was returning from a trip to ask if she needed him to bring anything from outside. It was a kind habit of his. If it were him, could she scream? Would he hear through the phone in her pocket? She tried to move her hand. The command was sent by her brain. Move your right hand. Grab the phone, but her body did not respond. Her arms were stretched back and up, tied to the tree trunk for hours. Her shoulder joints were locked. The circulation in her wrists, cut off by the water-swollen sisal rope, had stopped long ago. She could not feel her hands. They were dead weights hanging from the tree. She could not reach her pocket. She could not slide her finger across the screen. The phone vibrated once more, insistent, desperate. A lifeline touching the skin of her leg, inches away, yet as unreachable as the moon. Mr. Bennett! She tried to scream, but only a hoarse whisper escaped, swallowed by the noise of the water jet. Help me! The phone rang until it went to voicemail. The silence of the device was worse than the sound of the water. Then it rang again and again, until it stopped for good. Sadie cried, her warm tears getting lost in the cold water from the spray. Hope had touched her leg, vibrated her skin, and then left. 25 miles away, in the back seat of a black armored sedan speeding down the interstate, Bennett forcefully hung up his cell phone, throwing it onto the beige leather seat beside him. "No one is answering in that house," he exclaimed, running both hands through his hair in a gesture of pure frustration. "What the hell?" The driver, Mr. Morris, a grey-haired man who had driven for the family for decades, looked in the rear-view mirror with concern. He had never seen Bennett lose his composure like that. "Miss Sloane isn't answering, mister?" "Neither Sloane, nor the kitchen landline, nor Sadie." Bennett looked at his wristwatch. The hands seemed to mock him. There were 2 hours left until Mass. "Sadie never fails to answer, Morris. Never. If she is cleaning and cannot speak, she answers, excuses herself, and says, 'Mister, I will return shortly.' She knows today is the day. She knows—" Bennett stopped, his voice choked. He looked out the window, watching the blurred landscape pass by. A memory flooded his mind. The last time he saw his father alive. Mr. Thatcher was in the hospital bed, weak, holding that letter. He said, "Son, I wrote this because my voice is failing. When you miss me, read it. I will be in the ink on the paper." That letter was his father. It was the only physical thing left of that voice. And Bennett had a ritual. Before every memorial service, he needed to read the letter. He needed to touch the paper. It was his power source. Without it, he could not face the church, society's fake condolences, the social theatre. And now, this silence at home, this empty feeling in his stomach, it was as if an invisible umbilical cord had been cut. "Speed up, Morris, please," Bennett asked, his voice low. "I have a bad feeling, a tightness in my chest that won't go away." "Consider it done, Mr. Bennett. I'll turn on the siren if needed." The car sped up, cutting through traffic. Bennett picked up his cell phone again. His hands trembled slightly. He dialed the gatehouse of the luxury community. "Gatehouse, good afternoon. This is Bennett, from House 42. He tried to keep his voice steady. "Did anyone enter or leave my house today? Was there any incident?" "Oh, Mr. Bennett. Good afternoon." The doorman's voice was calm, irritatingly normal. "Look, the armored escort vehicle just left, but it was a routine patrol. For visitors, only Miss Sloane's manicurist, Kiki, came in half an hour ago." "And the police? Did someone call the police to my house?" "Police?" The doorman seemed confused. "No, sir. Heaven forbid. Everything's calm here. Pin drop silence. Why? Did something happen?" Bennett hung up without answering. Everything's calm. Pin drop silence. So why was his heart beating like a war drum? Why did he feel in the depths of his soul the smell of wet earth and destruction? Back in the garden, the cycle of terror finally ceased. The sprinkler gave a final click, and the black plastic head retracted, hiding in the grass like a sated animal. The water stopped. Silence returned, but now it was damp, heavy, and cold. Sadie was drenched. Her uniform weighed 10 kilograms, pulling her body down. Her hair was plastered to her face with a mask of mud. She was trembling so much she looked like she was having a seizure. She tried to lift her head to breathe better, to clear her mud-clogged nose. But the dizziness hit hard. The world spun in black spirals. Hunger, thirst, pain, cold, heat. Her body was going into systemic collapse. Psst! Kid. Sadie. A whisper came from the blue hydrangea bushes near the kitchen door. Sadie opened her swollen eyes with difficulty. It was Ms. Eudora. The cook, the plump woman, usually smiling, was crouched behind the flowers, her face red and swollen from crying so much. In her hands, she held a bottle of ice water and a napkin with ice cubes. "Ms. Eudora," Sadie groaned, her voice like sandpaper tearing her throat. "The letter, I am holding the letter. It is dry, Ms. Eudora. Tell Mr. Bennett it is dry." "Oh, my child, my goodness, what that demoness did to you, Ms." Eudora looked at the terrace, terrified, checking if the mistress was watching. "I brought water. Drink quickly. For heaven's sake, drink before she sees." Ms. Eudora came out of hiding and ran, stumbling on the wet grass, her clogs sinking into the mud. She knelt in the mud next to Sadie, not caring about dirtying her impeccable white apron. With trembling, caring hands, she wiped the mud from Sadie's mouth and brought the bottle to her cracked lips. "Drink, child. Drink slowly." The fresh water touched Sadie's tongue. It was like an angel's kiss. She drank greedily, choking, feeling life return a little to her broken body. "Thank you. Thank you. God bless you." "What does this mean?" The scream came from the terrace. It was not a scream of anger. It was a scream of triumph from someone who had been waiting exactly for that moment. Sloane stood on the balustrade, cell phone in hand, filming everything. "I warned you," Sloane yelled, descending the marble stairs to the garden like a white storm. "I said it loud and clear. Anyone who helped the thief would be kicked to the curb." Ms. Eudora dropped the bottle in the mud. She got up with difficulty, her knees aching, but she placed herself in front of Sadie, spreading her arms to protect her like an old, tired mama bear. "Ms. Sloane, have mercy. Do you have no God in your heart? The kid is freezing to death. She's going to catch pneumonia. She's purple. This is inhumane. We don't even treat a mangy dog like this. Shut your insolent old mouth." Sloane stopped 2 yards in front of her, careful not to dirty her feet. Her face was a mask of hatred. "You've worked in this house for 20 years, haven't you? Well, it's over. Now, grab your things. You're fired for cause, insubordination and complicity with a criminal." "I have everything on video. But, Miss Sloane, Mr. Bennett, he needs me. He considers me family. I watched him grow up." Eudora cried, clasping her hands in supplication, her pride broken by the fear of destitution. "Bennett doesn't run things here today. I do. I am the future lady of this house." Sloane pointed her freshly manicured finger toward the service gate. "Get out now. If you take 1 more minute, I'll call private security to throw you onto the sidewalk like a trash bag. And don't expect a letter of recommendation. I'll tell everyone in town that you stole food from the pantry. Who's going to hire a thieving cook at your age?" The threat was a death blow. Ms. Eudora looked at Sadie. The cook's gaze was one of pure pain and helplessness. She wanted to stay, wanted to fight, wanted to untie the kid. But she had grandchildren to raise, a sick husband. She needed that job or the hope of getting another. Sloane's psychological terror was paralyzing. Forgive me, kid. Forgive me, my child, Eudora whispered to Sadie, sobbing. Go, Miss Eudora, go. Sadie stammered, spitting mud. Don't lose your life because of me. Mr. Bennet will know. He will. The cook ran off, crying loudly, a sound of lament that cut through the garden. The service gate slammed shut with a metallic clang. Now, Sadie was truly alone. No allies, no witnesses, no water. Sloane approached her. The fiancé looked at the water bottle fallen in the mud, spilling the precious liquid onto the ground, forming a clean puddle in the middle of the dirty clay. With the tip of her expensive slipper, Sloane kicked the bottle away, out of anyone's reach. "Do you see what you did?" Sloane said, softly cruel, tilting her head. "You ruined Eudora's life. It's your fault. Everything bad that happens in this house is your fault. You are a cancer, Sadie." De Sloane bent down a little, resting her hands on her knees, looking into Sadie's narrowed eyes. "Are you still protecting that trash under you? Give up. The paper must have turned to pulp a long time ago. Bennet will arrive. He'll see this dirt, this mess, and he'll see you, filthy, pathetic, smelling of mud. He will feel disgust. His love for his father is clean, noble, aesthetic. You turned his father's memory into mud. He will never forgive you." Sadie did not respond. She had no strength to respond. She just closed her eyes and focused all her remaining energy on a single point, her chest against the floor. It did not get wet. I know it did not get wet. The center is dry. Its heart is dry. Sloane huffed, bored by the lack of reaction. She straightened up, brushing an imaginary speck of dirt from her robe. "Stay there. The sun is setting. Soon the mosquitoes will come. I hope they enjoy a thief's blood." Sloane returned to the house, strutting, victorious. Sadie remained. The sun began to dip below the horizon. The heat lessened, but this was no blessing. With the tree's shadow completely covering her, the chill from her wet body drastically worsened. The cramps in her legs were unbearable, knots of pain that made her muscles twitch on their own. Her arms, stretched back and upward for hours, had lost all sensation. Blood was not reaching her hands. She could no longer feel her fingers. Sadie's mind began to wander. The delirium of fever and exhaustion began to paint images before her eyes. She saw the image of Bennet's father, but it was not the photograph. It was the real man, as Bennet described him in the stories he told. He stood before her, wearing an impeccable white suit, without a single mud stain. He smiled. "Thank you, kid," the voice seemed to say in the wind that rustled the leaves. "Thank you for taking care of me when no one else did." "You're welcome, Mr. Thatcher." She whispered to the mud, smiling a broken smile. "I will take care. I will take care of you and boy Bennet. No one will touch you." Time dragged on. Minutes turned into centuries of pain. Daylight began to turn orange, announcing the end of the afternoon, until the sound changed. It was not wind in the leaves. It was not water in the sprinkler. It was an engine. Powerful, smooth, familiar. The electronic front gate of the manor, far away, emitted its characteristic beep that echoed through the silent property, and the sound of heavy tires crushing the gravel of the main entrance echoed. Sadie's heart, which was beating slowly and weakly, gave a violent leap, almost stopping entirely. Him. He had returned. She tried to lift her head, her neck cracked, stiff from the cold. She tried to scream, "Mr. Bennet," but from her swollen throat came only a hoarse, inaudible sound, the whimper of a wounded animal dying in a trap. She had no voice. No one would hear her. Up ahead at the main entrance, the black sedan braked sharply. Sloane, who was in the living room touching up her blood-red lipstick in front of the Venetian mirror, heard the car. Her eyes gleamed. The final show was about to begin. She deliberately messed up her own hair, letting a strand fall loose. She unbuttoned a button on her robe to appear disheveled. a victim of a stressful day of struggle. She pinched her own cheeks to look flushed with nervousness. She ran to the door. Bennett exited the car before the driver could even open the door. He was impeccable in his black suit, black tie, ready for mass. But his face was pale, tense, a mask of concern. He climbed the entrance steps 2 at a time, ignoring his usual elegance. The manor door opened. Sloane threw herself into his arms with the force of a falling dead body. "Bennett, thank goodness you're here. I was so scared," she cried, her voice a perfect trembling sob, worthy of a primetime soap star. Bennett held her by reflex, but did not embrace her back. His body was stiff as a board. His eyes did not look at her. They swept the room over her shoulder, searching for something, searching for someone. "What happened, Sloane?" His voice was pure ice. "Where is Sadie? Why isn't anyone answering the damned door?" Sloane stepped back, holding his face with both hands, looking deep into his eyes with a maniacal intensity. "My love, it is a tragedy. Sadie," she snapped. She completely lost her mind. "Snapped?" Bennett frowned, incredulous. "What do you mean, snapped?" "Sadie is the calmest person I know." "That is what we thought." Sloane released him and began pacing the living room, gesticulating. "I caught her in your study. She was stealing, Bennett. Money, the watch collection. I tried to stop her. I spoke calmly, and she lunged at me. She attacked me. Look at my arm." She pulled back the sleeve of her robe and showed the red mark she herself had made hours earlier, now turning purple. Bennett looked at her arm, then at her face. Something did not add up. "Sadie attacked you. Sadie who apologizes even when she bumps into a table. Sadie who takes off her shoes to avoid making noise when I have a migraine. That does not make sense, Sloane." "She was drugged, Bennett, or possessed, I don't know." Sloane raised her voice, bordering on hysteria. She started screaming that she hated this house, hated us, hated your father. The mention of his father was a shot to Bennett's chest. He froze. "What did you say?" Sloane stopped. She paused dramatically. She covered her mouth with her hand, feigning horror at remembering. "She went into the study, and she took the letter, Bennett. Mr. Thatcher's letter. She said she was going to hurt you where it hurt the most, that she was going to tear the old man to shreds." Bennett pushed Sloane lightly aside, without any gentleness. He ran to the hallway. He entered the study. The scene was like a war zone. Drawers ripped out and thrown on the floor. Books knocked over. The silver picture frame where the letter had been was empty. The broken glass on the floor glittered like dead diamonds. Bennett felt his knees buckle. He couldn't breathe. He leaned on the oak table to keep from falling. The letter, the last words, gone. The bond with his father was broken. Where? His voice cracked, coming out as a broken whisper. "Where is she? Where is Sadie?" Sloane appeared at the study door, leaning against the frame with the expression of a grieving widow who had done everything she could. She ran to the garden, darling, taking everything. She had the letter in her hand, screaming. The security guards had to run after her. She was acting like a wild animal, biting, kicking. They had to hold her outside. They had to tie her to the tree so she would not run off with the things until the police arrived. "Tie her?" Bennett repeated the word, his brain trying to process the absurd information. "It was for her safety, Bennett. She was going to jump the wall. She was going to disappear with your father's letter forever. They are holding her there." Bennett did not wait for the end of the explanation. A cold fury mixed with overwhelming despair took over every cell of his body. He did not see the weeping fiancée. He did not see the mess. He only saw the image of the letter being carried away. He spun on his heels and ran. He crossed the living room like a hurricane, knocking over a chair on the way. He opened the glass door leading to the garden with such force that the frame shook and almost came off its track. He stepped out into the garden. The sun was setting, dyeing the sky a blood red, violent and sad. The shadows were long and distorted. The garden was silent. But deep in the distance, 50 yards away, near the tree that he and his father planted together 30 years ago, there was something. It was not a person standing, restrained by security guards, as Sloane described. It was not a thief fleeing. Bennett squinted his eyes, trying to focus in the gloom. There was a strange shape at the base of the tree, a heap of blue rags and mud. It looked like a hit-and-run animal left to die. Bennett started to walk quickly, then jogged, then ran. With each step, the image grew clearer and more terrifying. He saw the rope, thick, tight. He saw the mud glistening where the water had pooled, and he saw the motionless woman lying face down, her arms twisted back in an impossible position, her face buried in the dirt. "Sadie?" Bennett's cry was not just a question thrown to the wind. It was a visceral roar of pain that tore through his throat, echoing against the property's high walls and making the glass windows of the manor vibrate. The sound startled the birds that were already settling in the oak tree's canopy for the night. A flock of parakeets flew in a flurry, screaming, startled by the human fury below, but the huddled figure at the base of the tree did not move. Not a muscle, not a breath, not a tremor, visible from that distance. Bennett froze for a second, his brain refusing to process the geometry of the horror before him. The twilight cast long, purple, distorted shadows over the garden. What his eyes saw did not align, in any way, with the story Sloane had just told in the air-conditioned room. But the woman before him was in a position of summary execution, kneeling on the ground, but with her torso collapsed forward, bent over herself as if praying or awaiting the final blow of a sword. Her face was buried in the red mud, hidden, and her arms. Bennett felt bile rise in his throat. His stomach churned violently. Her arms were pulled back and up at an unnatural angle that no human being would voluntarily maintain. And there were ropes. Many ropes. Thick, rough sisal wrapped around her wrists, going up her back and making cruel turns around the rough tree trunk, stretched like violin strings about to snap from the tension. "No," Bennett whispered, initial shock giving way to a trembling, cold adrenaline. "This isn't true." He took the first step. The handmade Italian leather shoe sank into the mud with a wet, obscene sound. The mud was soaked. There were puddles of water glistening around Sadie, reflecting the red sky. Bennett looked up instinctively. The sky was clear, pristine. Not a single drop of rain had fallen that day. The surrounding ground 10-15 feet away was dry, parched by the summer sun. But there, in that cursed 16-foot circle around the tree, there seemed to have been a localized biblical flood. He looked to the side and saw the culprit, the automatic sprinkler. Its black plastic head still gleamed with moisture, and there were droplets of water on the leaves of the nearby ferns. Understanding hit Bennett like a physical punch to the diaphragm, knocking the air out of him. They tied her up and turned on the water, torture, at his house, in his father's garden. "Bennett! Watch out!" Sloane's voice came from behind, shrill, broken by a fake theatrical run. She was coming down the lawn, holding the hem of her white silk robe to keep it from getting dirty on the damp grass, but keeping a safe distance, like someone observing a wild animal at the zoo. "Don't get close, darling. She might have a knife hidden under her. The security guard said she was armed. She's treacherous, Bennett." Bennett didn't even turn his head. Sloane's voice sounded like distorted background noise, an annoying blowfly's buzz that didn't deserve a second of attention in the face of the tragedy before him. He ran the last few feet, ignoring elegance, ignoring etiquette. He threw himself to the ground. He didn't care about his $3,000 tailored pants. He didn't care about the cold, dirty mud seeping into the fabric and touching his skin. He fell to his knees beside Sadie's head, dirty water splashing onto his face. The smell was strong and nauseating. The smell of disturbed wet earth, the smell of old wet wood, and a sweet metallic scent that Bennett in his panic took 3 seconds to recognize. Blood. "Sadie!" he called, his voice choked, thick with suppressed tears. He extended his trembling hand, afraid to touch and break, to reach her shoulder. Her blue uniform was soaked, black from being so wet, clinging to her skin like a second layer, transparent in some spots, revealing the wounds on her back where the tree bark had abraded her skin. Her back trembled with a tiny, vibrating, constant rhythm. She was not just cold, she was convulsing from hypothermia. Bennett touched her shoulder. The reaction was instantaneous and terrifying. Sadie did not turn to him. She did not sigh with relief at the human touch. The moment Bennett's warm fingers touched the cold fabric, Sadie let out a muffled scream against the earth, a guttural sound, stifled by the mud, of pure and absolute panic. She curled her body, trying to make herself smaller, trying to dig a hole in the earth with her own face to disappear. "No! Do not take it off!" She screamed at the mud, her voice hoarse, delirious, broken. "I will not let go. Do not hit me again. I will not let go." Bennett's heart stopped. The world went silent. "Do not hit me again." He withdrew his hand, as if he had touched a boiling plate. He looked at his open hands, then at her. She thought he was going to hit her. She thought he was the torturer returning for another session. "It's me," Bennett whispered, warm tears beginning to overflow and blur his vision, mixing with the dirt on his face. "Sadie, for God's sake, it's me. Bennett." Sadie stopped screaming, but remained rigid, stiff as a stone, locked in that forced fetal position. She was hyperventilating, pulling air with difficulty, the sharp, hissing sound of someone with nostrils clogged with mud. "Bennett!" Sloane arrived, stopping 2 steps away, her face contorted with genuine disgust at seeing her fiancé, the most elegant man she knew, kneeling in the filth. "Get out of there, Bennett! You're getting all dirty! Look at your suit! Let the security guards handle it. They'll take her to the police station now. She needs to be interrogated." Bennett raised his head. For the first time since getting out of the car, he looked directly at Sloane. His eyes, usually brown, warm and kind, were black. Dilated pupils consumed the iris. They were a stranger's eyes. The gaze of a man who suddenly realizes he has slept beside a monster for 2 years. "Shut up," Bennett said. He did not yell. He did not raise his voice. He enunciated each syllable with a deadly calm, low, vibrating, and terrible. An absolute command. Sloane stepped back, physically pushed by the intensity of that silent hatred. She brought her hand to her neck, feeling the air thin. Bennett turned his full attention to Sadie. He needed to see the damage. He looked at her wrists. The sight made him close his eyes for a second, asking for strength. The sisal rope had swollen with water absorption. It had tightened. It had bitten into the flesh to the bone. There was blood mixed with water running down her fingers, dripping rhythmically onto the exposed tree root. Her hands were purple, swollen, looking like air-filled rubber gloves. There was no circulation. Her fingers were twisted. "My God, what did they do to you?" Bennett choked, his voice failing. He needed to free her. Now. Every second counted to save those hands. He tried to untie the knot with his fingers. His nails scraped against the wet, rock-hard rope. The overhand knot was too tight, fused by the water. He pulled, he strained, he broke his own nail to the quick. He bled, but the rope did not give an inch. A blind, primal fury consumed him. He sprang to his feet, spinning towards Sloane like a cornered animal. "A knife!" he roared, the sound coming from deep in his chest. "Bring me a knife! Now!" Sloane trembled, shrinking back into her robe. I don't have one." "Bennett, you're overreacting. She's just tied up so she won't run away. The police are coming to free her." "You don't need to ruin the rope." Bennett did not wait for her to finish the idiotic sentence. "Ruin the rope?" He plunged his hand into the inner pocket of his jacket, fumbling desperately. He had no pocket knife. He only had his silver metal money clip. Useless. He looked around, turning his head, his eyes scanning the garden for anything sharp. A sharp stone, a piece of glass, anything. His eyes fell upon Mr. Otis's gardening toolbox, left near the hedge, 10 yards away. The gardener must have dropped it there when Sloane had him fired. Bennett ran. He did not run like a businessman. He ran like a desperate man. He reached the box and kicked it, spilling its contents onto the grass. Shovels, rakes, gloves flew. He knelt, rummaging through the metal. He found it. A pair of pruning shears. Large, curved blade, heavy, carbon steel, sharpened to cut thick branches. He gripped the shears as if they were a sacred weapon. He ran back to the tree, slipping in the mud, falling to his knees again behind Sadie. "Don't move, kid. Don't move. I'm going to get this off you," he said, his voice trembling, trying to sound calm but failing. With surgical precision, holding his breath, he slipped the cold tip of the scissors between the tight rope and Sadie's injured wrist. Her skin was so bruised, so raw, that the mere touch of the cold metal made her let out a sharp groan of pain. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It will be over now." Bennett closed his eyes for a second, visualizing the cut, praying to God not to hurt her any further, and he gripped the handle of the scissors with both hands. The sound of the thick rope being cut was loud, dry. The tension released. Sadie's arms, freed from hours of torture, fell limp beside her body, hitting the mud with a soft, lifeless thud. "There. It's over. It's over." Bennett dropped the scissors in the mud, without looking where they fell. "Sadie, can you hear me? Let's get you up. You need to get out of this cold. We need to warm you up." He placed his hands on her shoulders, gently, trying to pull her back, to turn her onto her back. He wanted to see her face. He wanted to see if her eyes were open. He wanted to see if she was breathing well. But Sadie resisted. It was terrifying. Even loose, even with her arms free, her body did not obey the command to relax. She locked the muscles in her neck, back, and thighs. The rigidity of the trauma held her in that position. She dug her knees into the earth, taking root. She pressed her chest against the ground with superhuman, maniacal strength. "No!" she whimpered, shaking her head in the mud, rubbing her forehead in the dirt. "Don't turn me. It will fly. The wind will take it. Don't let it fly." "What will fly?" Bennett frowned, confused, trying to understand the delirium. "Sadie, there's nothing here. It's over. Let me help you. Look at me." "The letter," she whispered. It was so low, so weak, that Bennett had to bend down completely, pressing his ear to her mud-stained mouth to understand the words. "Mr. Thatcher's letter. I'm holding it. Don't let it get wet, Mr. Bennett. Please don't let the water erase him." Bennett's world stopped spinning. The sound of the wind in the leaves vanished. The sound of Sloane's hysterical breathing behind him vanished. The sound of his own heart vanished. Only that sentence existed, and the infinite weight it carried. Mr. Thatcher's letter. I'm holding it. Bennett recoiled a few inches, looking at her curved back, at the strange, shell-like, shield-like position. Sloane had said in no uncertain terms that she stole the letter and ran, that she tore it up and threw the pieces around the garden out of malice. But Sadie, amidst the delirium, pain, and hypothermia, was saying she was holding it. With his heart pounding in his throat, suffocating him, Bennett changed his stance. He leaned over her, protective. "Sadie," he said, his voice completely broken by the uncontrollable sobs rising from his chest. Are you lying on top of it? She tore it." Sadie sobbed, a sound of infinite pain, like someone who had failed a sacred mission. "Ms. Sloane tore it, threw it on the ground. The wind would carry it away. The water would erase everything, Mr. Bennett. I lay on top of it. I swear I didn't let it get wet. I swear." Bennett looked at the mud around them. Everything was liquid mud, dirty, disgusting, puddled water reflecting the red of the sunset. But there, exactly beneath her chest, where her body made contact with the ground, there seemed to be a vacuum, a seal. He looked at Sloane over his shoulder. The fiancée was pale, white as paper. Her mask had fallen and shattered into 1,000 pieces. She knew the game was over. She took a step back, opening her mouth to invent another lie, but no sound came out. The physical truth was about to be revealed. Bennett turned to Sadie. He placed his hand on her head, stroking her mud-caked hair. "Kid," he used the affectionate nickname his father used, the safety keyword between them. "Let me see. I promise I'll hold it. I promise it won't fly away. Mr. Thatcher is safe now. I am here." Sadie, hearing his gentle voice, the promising tone and feeling the warmth of his hand, finally gave in. Exhaustion overcame the stubbornness of her muscles. "Okay," she whispered, her body softening all at once. "Be careful. It's torn." Slowly, with Bennett's help, she relaxed the tension in her back. Bennett held her by the shoulders and pulled her back, lifting her chest from the ground for the first time in 4 hours. Sadie rolled into his arms, her head falling limp, heavy, onto his shoulder. Her face was a mask of red clay, her eyes closed, swollen. She fainted from relief in his arms. And then Bennett looked at the ground, to the spot where her heart had been pressed against the earth throughout the entire ordeal. It was the saddest yet most beautiful and sacred sight Bennett had ever seen in his 36 years of life. In the midst of that sea of orange, pasty mud and dirty water, there was a perfect circle, a sanctuary of dry, untouched red dust. The earth there was parched, protected, and there, nestled in that dry cradle, in the exact center of her body's imprint, were the pieces of paper, the letter. The pieces were together, organized, assembled like a puzzle. The paper was a little crumpled, yes. It bore marks from the weave of her blouse pressed against it, but the ink, the blue ink from his father's fountain pen, was perfect. There were no smudges, there were no water stains, there wasn't a single drop. His father's torn, wallet-sized photo was there, his smiling face dry, protected in the midst of the artificial storm. Bennett looked at Sadie's chest, now turned upward in his arms. Her uniform was soaked and heavy on her back, on her arms, on her stomach. But in front, right in the center of her chest, there was a dry rectangular mark beneath the superficial mud, where the paper had absorbed her body heat and her skin had blocked the moisture. She had used her own body as a human shield. She had accepted the torture of the icy water, the pain of the ropes, the humiliation, the cold, the fear. Just so those words would not be erased. She knew that was his soul. She knew that letter was all he had, and she protected his soul with her flesh. Bennett let out a sound that was not human. It was a strangled howl of pain, gratitude, and devastating love. He picked up the pieces of paper with a trembling hand, as if they were made of sacred ashes or diamond dust. He brought them close to his chest. They were warm. They did not have the cold of the ground. They had her warmth. He looked at Sadie unconscious in his arms. She trembled even while unconscious, her purple lips chattering. "I am sorry. It tore a little," she murmured in her sleep, her mind trapped in the moment of Sloane's crime. Bennett dropped the papers onto his dry lap, the only dry part of his body now, and embraced Sadie with both arms, clutching her against him with desperate strength. He soiled his expensive suit, his white silk shirt, his neck, with the mud that covered her dignity. He wanted that mud on him. He wanted to share that filth. "You saved," he cried, tears falling onto her dirty face, washing away the clay. "You saved everything, Sadie. You saved my father. You saved me." He kissed her mud-stained forehead. He kissed her dirty hair. He kissed her swollen, wounded hands, covering them with his own to try and warm them. "Bennett!" Sloane tried one last gambit, her voice shrill with pure panic, realizing his silence was her end. "This is a trick. She is a witch. She hid down there when she heard your car. She stole it, Bennett. She was going to take it away. Believe me, I am your fiancé." Bennett stopped crying instantly. The tears dried on his face. He still held Sadie with a firm arm, protecting her head against his chest. Slowly, very slowly, he raised his head and looked at Sloane. He did not yell. He did not stand up to hit her, though the urge to destroy her was immense. He just looked. He looked at the impeccable woman, dry, perfumed, with the white silk robe shining in the twilight, with her freshly done and perfect nails. And he looked at the woman in his arms, destroyed, dirty, wounded, bruised. He looked at the automatic sprinkler, the crime weapon. He looked at the cut ropes on the floor, the instruments of torture. He looked at the dry sanctuary in the mud, the proof of the miracle. The logic was irrefutable, brutal. Nobody ties themselves up like that alone. Nobody keeps a dry piece of paper under a high-pressure water jet for a trick of seconds. That was hours of immobility, hours of sacrifice, hours of silent pain. Bennett's silence grew heavy, dense, filling the entire garden. It was a silence that screamed. He picked up, with his fingertips dirty with mud and blood, one of the pieces of the letter. He held it up in the air against the setting sun for Sloane to see. "You said she tore it up and threw it away," Bennett said. His voice was unrecognizable, low, hoarse, dangerous. "You said she ran through the garden." He gestured with his chin at the dry mark on the ground, the perfect circle. "Bodies that run don't leave dry earth beneath them, Sloane. Bodies that run don't protect paper from the rain. Only bodies that love do that." Sloane opened her mouth, then closed it. She opened it again. No sound came out. She was cornered by physics, by logic, and by the absolute morality of the scene. The universe conspired against her lie. "You turned on the water," Bennett continued, connecting the dots aloud, each sentence like a nail being hammered into the coffin of their relationship. "You tied her up like an animal. You saw her lying here, suffering, and you went to get your nails done." He looked at Sloane's hands, at the perfect French manicure. Then he looked at Sadie's hands, purple, deformed. "Bennett, my love, listen to me. I did it for our own good. She's obsessive. I was protecting our home." Bennett turned his attention back to Sadie. He ignored Sloane's existence. He adjusted her better in his arms, sliding one arm under her knees and the other across her back. He prepared to lift her. He was strong, but the dead weight of an unconscious wet body was immense. His legs trembled in the mud, but he did not falter. He clenched his jaw and lifted Sadie from the ground, as if she were made of sacred feathers. He carefully picked up the pieces of the letter and put them in his shirt pocket close to his heart, where they would be safe. Then he started walking toward the house. "Bennett! Where are you going?" Sloane ran after him, stumbling on the grass, trying to grab his wet arm. "You'll get the whole house dirty. She's filthy. Leave her in the utility area. Bennett, for heaven's sake, we have guests arriving." Bennett stopped. He sharply turned his body to shield Sadie from Sloane's touch, as if his fiancée were a contagious and lethal disease. "Do not touch her," he said, his eyes blazing at Sloane. "Never touch her again. Do not even breathe the same air as her." "But the Mass!" Sloane cried, desperate, clinging to the last thing she thought mattered to him. "We are going to be late for his father's Mass. The priest is waiting. All of society will be there." Bennett looked at Sloane with a glacial calm that made her soul freeze. "The Mass already happened, Sloane." He looked at Sadie, unconscious in his arms, at her dirty, martyred face. The Mass was here, in the garden, and she was the only one who prayed. Bennett definitively turned his back. He walked toward the manor, carrying the cleaner in his arms like a bride. Bennett did not need to open the door. He came from the garden like a storm. He kicked the living room glass door with the sole of his mud-stained shoe, flinging open the passage into the manor. The glass vibrated violently, almost shattering, announcing his arrival. He crossed the living room, stepping on the Persian rug with his muddy shoes, not veering, walking straight toward the staircase hall. Inside the house, the atmosphere was a tense wake. The remaining staff, Mr. So, Winston the butler, Fern the maid, and the pantryman, were huddled in a corner near the kitchen, whispering in fear. They had seen Miss Sloane, the mistress, rush in earlier, shouting that Mr. Bennett had gone mad. But what they saw now made everyone's blood run cold. Bennett entered the hall, illuminated by the warm yellow light. He was unrecognizable. The man who always demanded absolute cleanliness was covered in red mud from neck to foot. His $3,000 Italian suit was ruined. His face had splatters of dried mud and streaks of tears, but it was what he carried in his arms that made the house hold its breath. Sadie, the invisible cleaner. She was nestled in his lap, her head fallen heavily on her boss's shoulder. Her bare feet, purple and caked with dirt, dangled lifelessly in the air. Her blue uniform was black from being so soaked, dripping thick, muddy water onto the imported white marble floor. Plink, plink, plink. The sound of the drops falling in the absolute silence was deafening. Mr. Bennett, the butler, Mr. Winston, stepped forward, his hands trembling. My goodness, should I call the police? Where should I put the girl? In the maid's quarters in the back. Bennett stopped at the bottom of the stairs. He looked at the butler with burning eyes. Police? Bennett growled, his deep voice vibrating in his chest. Forget the police. Call Dr. Abernathy, my private doctor. Now tell him it's an emergency, code red, severe hypothermia, lacerations on her wrists, and possible pneumonia. Tell him to bring everything. Yes, sir. Immediately. The butler rushed to the phone. And Sadie, sir? The chambermaid Fern asked tearfully. Her room is outside. It is cold. Sadie is coming to my room, Bennett cut in, his voice brooking no argument, loud enough to echo to the ceiling. Sadie will never set foot in the maid's quarters again. Prepare the master bath. Warm water, not boiling, warm. Bring warm towels, the Egyptian cotton ones, the softest you have, and bring the first aid kit, now. The final shout made the staff scramble. The social order of the house had been broken. The housekeeper was going to the master suite. Bennett began to climb the curved, carpeted staircase. With each step, the mud from his shoes and the water dripping from Sadie stained the immaculate beige carpet. He did not look down. He felt the cold of her body transferring to his through his wet shirt. She was trembling violently, spasms that shook them both. Her teeth chattered against his neck. Hold on, kid. Hold on, he whispered in her ear, kissing her dirty hair. I am here. Never again. I promise. Never again will you feel cold in this house. Meanwhile, in the dark garden, Sloane stood in the mud where Bennett had left her. She looked at the lit house. She saw Bennett's shadow climbing the stairs through the window. She heard his command echoing, "To my room." Hatred exploded in her chest, hot, venomous and bitter. She had not lost. It was not possible. She could not lose everything, her status, her money, her millionaire fiancé, to a cleaner who hadn't even finished high school. She was Sloane. She had a last name. She had class. She looked at her own silk robe. There were mud splatters on the hem. The engagement ring still gleamed on her finger, a promise she refused to believe was broken. She frantically smoothed her hair. She took a deep breath. She put on the concerned and rational fiancé face that always worked to manipulate men. He is in shock, she told herself aloud, trying to believe it. He is confused. He saw the mess and got emotional. I will explain. He will understand that I protected his assets. Men like strong women who make tough decisions. She marched into the house. She crossed the living room. She entered the hall. The butler was on the phone calling the doctor. He looked at Sloane with a strange gaze. It was not fear. It was judgment. Sloane ignored him. She looked at the trail of mud and muddy water climbing the main staircase. How disgusting, she hissed. I will have to have this carpet ripped out tomorrow. The smell of poverty has permeated the house. She started climbing the stairs behind them, ready for war. In the master bath, steam began to fill the luxurious space of Carrara marble and golden faucets. Bennett sat Sadie on the closed toilet lid, supporting her back against the tiled wall so she wouldn't fall sideways. She was pale, her lips purple. She was semi-conscious, her eyes rolling, murmuring disconnected things. Cold. It's cold. The letter. It doesn't make sense. The letter is here, Sadie. It's here in my pocket. Dry. Bennett touched his shirt pocket over his heart, confirming the papers were there. He took off his dirty jacket and threw it on the wet floor. He removed his suffocating tie. Let's get these wet clothes off you. You need to warm up. He reached out to unbutton the collar of her uniform. The moment his fingers touched her neck, her trauma instinct flared. Sadie opened her eyes, wide with terror. She slapped Bennett's hand, weakly but desperately. She cringed against the wall, covering her chest with her injured arms. "No! Don't touch me!" she screamed, her voice hoarse. "I didn't do anything! Don't tear it!" Bennett's heart broke into 1,000 pieces. She thought he was going to attack her. She thought he was Sloane coming back to finish the job. Bennett pulled his hands back, showing his open palms. He knelt on the floor to appear smaller than her. Hey, it's me, Bennett." He spoke slowly, softly. "Look at me, Sadie. No one is going to hurt you. It's me, Thatcher's boy, remember?" Sadie blinked, her breath ragged. She looked at his face. She saw the dirt, but she saw his eyes full of tears. Gradually, terror gave way to recognition. "Mister," she whispered, "it hurts. I know it hurts. We need to get these cold clothes off to stop the pain. May I?" She nodded, minimally. She lowered her arms. With sacred respect, with hands trembling in rage at what had been done to her, Bennett began to unbutton her uniform. With each button he opened, his fury against Sloane intensified. He saw the skin on her stomach. It was scraped raw, where she had dragged herself against the tree trunk. He saw her bruised shoulders and her wrists, purple, swollen, with deep cuts where the rope had dug into her skin. He removed her soaked, heavy blouse. He took off her mud-caked pants. Sadie was left in only her simple beige cotton underwear, worn from use. She looked so small there, so fragile, but the marks on her body told the story of a giant, of a warrior. Bennett filled the whirlpool tub. He tested the temperature with his elbow. Lukewarm. He picked her up again and placed her in the water. Sadie groaned a long, pained sound when the water touched her open wounds. "Shh! It will pass. It will pass. Breathe." He took a soft sponge. He began to clean the mud from her face. The bath water instantly turned red and brown. Bennett washed her hair. He removed the clumps of clay from her ears, and as Bennett cleaned her face, removing the mask of humiliation, he saw. Her face was beautiful. He had never truly stopped to look. She was always with her head down, serving, invisible. But now, pale, vulnerable, she possessed a painful, sacred beauty. "Bennett?" The voice came from the bedroom door, sharp as glass. Sloane was there, standing in the bathroom doorway. Her impeccable white robe contrasted with the dirt and intimacy of the scene. She looked at everything. Bennett kneeling, wet, his shirt sleeves rolled up, washing naked Sadie's arm amidst the foam. "What do you think you are doing?" Sloane asked, her voice trembling with indignation and jealousy. "You put Sadie in our bathtub? In the bathtub we just used last week? Do you have any idea how disgusting that is?" Bennett froze the sponge in midair. He did not turn immediately. He continued looking at Sadie's injured hand in the water. He took a deep breath, controlling the urge to do something crazy. "Get out of here, Sloane," he said softly. "I am not leaving." Sloane entered the bathroom, her heel clicking on the marble floor. "Have you lost your mind? Are you washing her? She is a thief. She is dirty. You are touching her as if she were your wife. I am your wife." Bennett slowly stood up. He turned around. He was wet, covered in mud, blood, and bathwater. He looked like a monster emerging from the swamp to exact justice. He walked toward Sloane. Sloane recoiled, intimidated by his height, hitting her back against the double marble sink. "Is she dirty?" Bennett asked, his voice dangerously calm. "Look at the water, Sloane." He pointed to the bathtub. The water was dark, muddy. This dirt comes off with soap and water. The mud washes away. Blood dries and scars. Bennett took another step, invading Sloane's personal space, cornering her. But your filth, the filth inside your soul, that won't come off. Not with all the money in the world. Not with all the time in the world. You are rotten, Sloane. Bennett, stop it. I am your fiancé. We are getting married next month. The invitations have already been sent. You cannot do this to me because of a maid. Bennett looked at Sloane's left hand. The 5-carat engagement ring sparkled on her finger. The same ring she refused to get dirty, but wore while watching the torture. Give me the ring, Bennett ordered, dryly. Sloane blinked, confused. A smile of relief appeared on her face. She thought he wanted the ring to kiss her hand, to make amends. Oh, my love, I knew you would come to your senses. She quickly took off the ring, eager. Here, it's our symbol. She placed the diamond in Bennett's dirty palm. Bennett closed his fingers over the cold stone. He brought his other hand to his shirt pocket over his heart. He took out the pieces of the letter, protected in a dry handkerchief. He placed them on the dry counter, away from Sloane, as if protecting a treasure from a thief. Then he held the ring at her eye level. This ring, Bennett said. It requires clean hands to be worn. Noble hands, hands that care, not that harm. He looked at Sloane's perfectly manicured hands. Your hands are not dirty with soil, Sloane. They are dirty with cruelty. Bennett walked to the toilet. He raised his hand over the clean toilet water. What are you going to do? Sloane asked, her voice fading. Bennett, no! It cost $100,000! Bennett opened his fingers. Plop! The ring fell into the water, sinking to the bottom of the porcelain. Sloane let out an animalistic scream and dropped to her knees on the bathroom floor. She plunged her hands into the toilet water, desperate, trying to reach the stone without caring about dignity. Get it! Get it before it goes down! She screamed, scratching the porcelain. Bennett flushed the toilet. Whoosh! The swirling water carried the diamond away into the sewer. Forever. Sloane let out a howl of physical pain, as if a piece of her had been torn away. She stared at the empty toilet bowl in disbelief. Then she looked at Bennett with pure hatred. You imbecile! You threw a fortune away! Bennett looked at her kneeling by the toilet, wet, pathetic. You cried for the ring, he said with infinite contempt. You plunged your hand into the toilet for a stone, but you didn't shed a tear, didn't lift a finger, for the woman you tortured for hours. Bennett grabbed Sloane by the arm and pulled her up with brute force, dragging her away from the toilet. Get out! What? Get out of my house, now, just as you are. But my clothes... My jewelry in the safe, my car in the garage. What you bought with your own money, I'll have delivered to your parents' house tomorrow in a moving truck. What I gave you stays. The car is mine, the clothes are mine, the jewelry is mine. You can't do this, I have rights, I'll sue you. I'll tell everyone you're having an affair with the cleaning lady. I'll destroy your reputation. Bennett smiled. A cold, terrible smile. Tell them, please, tell them. I beg you. Tell the judge how you tied a woman to a tree and turned on the high-pressure sprinkler. I'm sure the press will love to know what socialite Sloane did. By the way, Bennett pointed to the corner of the bedroom ceiling where a small red light blinked on a motion sensor. The house's security system is integrated. The garden cameras recorded everything, Sloane. From the moment you dragged her to the moment you kicked her water. It is all in the cloud. Color drained from Sloane's face. She turned grey. Cameras. She had forgotten in the arrogance of the moment. You have 10 minutes to get off my property, Bennett said, pushing her out of the room into the hallway. If in 10 minutes you are still on my property, I will call the police and hand over the footage. Torture is a non-bailable offence, Sloane. You choose. The street now, or jail tomorrow morning. Sloane looked at him. She saw his eyes. She saw there was no love, no negotiation, no pity, only cold justice. She looked one last time at the bathroom where Sadie was being cared for, and she ran. She stumbled down the stairs, crying with hatred, loss, and humiliation. She went out the front door, disappearing into the night. Bennett closed the bedroom door. He locked it. Silence returned to the house. The evil had left. He went back to the bathtub. Sadie was awake, looking at him with wide, frightened eyes. She had heard everything. "Mr. Bennett," she whispered, her voice failing. "The ring. You threw it away. It was a lot of money." Bennett knelt beside the bathtub again. He picked up a warm, soft towel that the butler had left. "The ring was worthless, Sadie. It was just shiny glass and carbon, a cold thing." He touched her injured hand with infinite care, taking it from the water. "The true value was here all along, cleaning my house, taking care of my father, and I almost let it break because I was blind." He wrapped her in the towel, covering her completely, and lifted her from the water, carrying her to the giant bed with clean sheets. 6 months later. The manor garden was different. The old tree, the oak tree, was still there, imposing. But now, at its base, the mud had disappeared. There was new green grass, and a bed of white lilies planted around the trunk. There was also a comfortable wooden bench placed in the shade where Sadie had once suffered. It was a Sunday afternoon with mild sunshine. Bennett was sitting on the bench reading a book. He looked younger, lighter. The dark circles from grief and stress were gone. The glass door to the living room opened. Sadie stepped out. She was not wearing a blue polyester uniform. She wore a light dress of white linen, floral, simple yet elegant. Her hair was loose, shining, swaying in the wind. She looked like the lady of the house, and she was. In her hands she carried a tray with coffee and cornmeal cake, and on her wrists, if someone looked closely, they would see the scars, thin, white, circular lines that outlined the skin, marks that would never fully disappear, reminders of that day. But over the scar on her left wrist, a delicate gold bracelet gleamed, with a small letter envelope-shaped charm. "The coffee, Bennett," she said, smiling. Her smile lit up the garden more than the sun. Bennett lowered his book. He smiled back, a loving smile. "Thank you, my love." Sadie placed the tray on the bench and sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. Bennett immediately took her hand. He brought her wrist to his lips and kissed the scar. He did this every day. It was their ritual, a daily plea for forgiveness and an eternal promise of protection. "Did you speak with Ms. Eudora?" Bennett asked. "I did. She is grinning from ear to ear. She said that with the raise you gave her, she will renovate her daughter's house, and she said she will make lasagna tonight." Bennett laughed. He had brought Eudora back the day after the incident, begging the old cook for forgiveness on his knees. The house now only had trustworthy people, people with heart. "Oh, this arrived for you," Sadie said, taking an envelope from her dress pocket. "From the lawyer." Bennett opened it without interest. It was the final judgment. Sloane had tried to leave the country but was blocked by lawsuits. She was socially ruined. Her friends had turned their backs when the rumors of torture leaked. She was now living off her aunt's generosity in a small apartment. Justice had been slow, but relentless. Bennett crumpled the paper. Passed. He looked at the living room through the open glass door. Inside, on the main wall above the fireplace, where an expensive, soulless abstract painting Sloane had chosen once hung. Now there was something else, a large golden frame with museum-quality anti-reflective glass. Inside the frame, against a navy blue velvet background, was the letter. The pieces were carefully glued, visible. The mends and tears were not hidden. They were celebrated like battle scars. His father's 3A4 photo, with the tear mark in the middle of the smile, was next to it. And below the letter, Bennett had ordered a bronze plaque with an eternal inscription to be placed. Sadie followed his gaze. They read the inscription mentally, together. Thatcher's letter, preserved by Sadie's courage. Only true love can protect what is priceless. Bennett squeezed her hand, intertwining their fingers. "You know," he said, looking at the tree where everything happened, "my father always told me that you only truly get to know people in a storm. In the sun, everyone is a friend. But when the rain comes and the mud rises, only those who love remain." Sadie looked at him, her eyes welling up with happiness. "I wasn't going to let the rain take him, Bennett, never. Not even if I had to stay there forever." "I know," Bennett said, kissing her forehead for a long moment. "And I promise, Sadie, as long as I live, I will never let any storm touch you again." The wind blew softly in the garden, swaying the white lilies. The oak tree leaves rustled. It seemed like silent applause, or perhaps, just perhaps, it was Mr. Thatcher from above finally resting in peace, whispering, "Thank you, kid. Now my son is in good hands." Did you like this story? Do you think Sloane got what she deserved, or was it not enough? And Sadie, did she deserve to suffer like that? Tell me in the comments. Until the next story.